and on a project. And for, about 4 years, I taught a course for their grounds management folks. And each course, it was a program. They were trying to receive certification through the Professional Grounds Management Association. And one of the components of that certification was that they trained employees. And they were looking for a more sustainable landscape situation on campus as well. And incorporating a lot of native plants, but they had a lot of great people working there. So they got the project launched and it went very well. But I taught there for almost 4 years. And then more recently, I've been working with Kalamazoo Valley Community College in creating a 2-year degree program there in horticulture and some landscape. And most recently, I'm working with the National Science Foundation. And basically what I'm doing is I'm mentoring a number of schools across the country to help them to get money from the National Science Foundation through a extensive grant process that NSF has, but they have lots of money. But many of the 2-year colleges don't know how to, they're not familiar with writing grants, and they don't know what is required by the NSF. So it's been fun. I'm a fellow mentor now with NSF, and I've been doing that for a while now, and it's going to get a little more extensive as they tell me in the next year or so. So we'll see what happens. I have had a lot of experience with native plants and native landscapes, and I can understand, Athena, what you're going through when you're trying to look for contractors as well. But it's overall been if you're looking for a building contractor, you go through much the same process that you've gone through right now. And also the prices are astounding. So it's one thing or the other, so it seems, but I keep in contact with the industry constantly. And I write a column for the Michigan Nursery magazine called Native Notes, and try to educate the contractors as to what's happening in the native plant world, as well as of other things. It's not that we separate native plants, and we shouldn't be separating them out. They should be incorporated in all the landscapes. And I think many landscape contractors realize that, but a lot of them really don't. They don't have the personnel. If they have a lawn mowing component to their business, many do, many don't. If you knew how many lawns you have to mow a week to keep a lawn mowing business successful, you wouldn't be in the lawn mowing. No, it's a lot of work, okay? And many of them would rather be working with the installation of plants and management and maintenance of systems. But a lot of individuals just don't, they're worried. And a lot of it is based on some experiences that they have heard about in the past. And then when you get into a discussion, when I get into a discussion with them, I always talk about, you really need to just get a feel for what obviously the client wants, what you want, and be able to explain it. I mean, we're talking about native trees. Well, a lot of the trees that landscape contractors already plant are native trees, okay? So it's not, it's not out of the ordinary at all. I think where they get a little bit nervous is when you talk about meadow or prairie plantings, because there are some keys to success there, and there's many failures that can occur. And mostly it's because you get invasive weeds that come in, and then they're concerned about controlling them, because if they start to try to control them, sometimes they kill off some of the native material, and it goes on from there. I think, and many organizations like Wild Ones and the Wildflower Association of Michigan and the Audubon Society and all the other groups, we're all promoting native landscapes, but unfortunately we don't have enough people to put native landscapes in. not only not to design them, but not to get them installed. And they do require some maintenance. I have not worked with any project that has not involved maintenance. And if someone thinks that there isn't going to be maintenance, they are fooling themselves. But I have also worked with a lot of successful plantings. And again, right now, it is just a matter of finding a contractor that has the time. I think you will be more successful here. I hate to say this, but as the year goes on, things start to loosen up a little bit. We had that spring rush, and we didn't have any capacity for a spring rush this year because we still had the work from last year. So it does make it a little bit more difficult. But there are folks like Vern, and there are a lot of other folks that are around that can help assist some of these folks. It's just that if they're used to doing traditional landscapes, and they run into a situation where they're just not familiar with the plants, or another situation is that they can't get the plants, which can cause some problems as well. And also they're looking for a reliable source. I worked with the highway department for a number of years. Our biggest problem with the wildflower plantings along the highways was we couldn't find seed. We couldn't get a seed source. Now, thank goodness we have Esther and the wildflower farm in Portland, but now to get some seed and a number of other places. But we were looking for seed that was native to this area and hopefully came from the surrounding areas. Not just necessarily Michigan, but Wisconsin or wherever we could get seed. And so I think because of a number of factors, someone not being familiar with the quote unquote design part of working with some of the native habitats, and or not being able to get material, and also not finding individuals and having the labor that they need, and having the labor trained to know what they're doing. And I remember one installation which was done successfully. It was I don't know if I'd call it a prairie installation. It was more like a prairie meadow type of situation. And then they had someone come in because they had weeds, a lot of weeds. And depending on how it's installed, you can have a lot of weeds in the seed bank, okay, if you will, in the soil you already have. And you don't want to agitate those to come, to create a lot of competition for the native seeds you're trying to get to grow. Well, they had worked up the soil a little too much, and it wasn't necessary. And they had a lot of weed seeds come in. But then they brought an individual in who didn't, and it's hard to tell. They couldn't tell the difference between the wildflower seedlings that were up and the weed seeds that were up. So they killed everything, okay? I don't remember what the cost was. It was close to $1,000 for the seed and the installation alone. So it was a costly project, okay? And it can be difficult. I can look at a batch of seedlings, and if it's mixed in with a lot of weed seeds, and I will miss some because it's difficult to tell when they're at the young stage. And I worked with the Federated Garden Clubs of Michigan one year, and they asked us to come in on a highway planting that basically they purchase the seed and MDOT installs the planting. And they said that they wanted to help weed, but they couldn't tell the difference between the wildflower seedlings and the weed seedlings, and it's tough. And they wanted to make sure they weren't pulling them out. So it's a combination of factors. I would say that if you have, I don't know, I have no idea how busy Vern was this spring, but I imagine he was pretty busy. And I don't know how many installations he does in a year. When I was working with Vern, he was a very small operation, and he's gotten to a larger operation now. And I believe he has 4 locations in the state now, instead of just the one that he's operating out of. So again, that alone would mean that he's probably got a lot going on. And I don't know, we don't have, are you I assume you're in Meridian Township, or you're
I'm in Okemos, yeah.
Okay. And we used to have a couple of companies that did quite a few installations, but they're not in business anymore here, for a variety of different reasons. It had nothing to do with the natives. And so there's kind of a shortage of individuals to work with. And also even from the designer standpoint, there are some individuals. In fact, I was talking the other day to someone about a project, and they said they wanted to use a gentleman named Dan Crow, who has a company here in this area. But Dan's not here anymore. So
that's the company that I'm working with.
Oh, is it? Okay.
With a young guy who was trained by Dan.
Yes.
Dan.
Yes.
And
yep.
And he's very nervous about, but when I told him about working kind of with Vern, he wasn't terribly comfortable with that. And kind of what Vern suggested and what this fellow agreed to was perhaps putting in some trees and foundation plants. But kind of it moved into, well, you know, are you sure you really want the native plants? And Vern's issue has been finding a designer, you know, that is available. So, you know, I don't know if I want this to go until I'm ready to meet my grave. I mean, it feels like
you'd like to see some progress here, right?
Maybe you could hire Robert, Athena.
Oh, is that a possibility, or maybe even a consultation?
It's a possibility. I have again, my schedule this year was horrendous too, but also I had several other projects going on at the time that were carryovers from last year. But we can talk. We'll talk offline, as they say. But there's I can understand where individuals, because in companies, you might have one person that knows something about native plants in regards to an installation. They would be a little nervous, especially if they haven't, put a couple of them in. And I could see where the gentleman, and I don't know who you're working with, and it doesn't matter, but that he might be a little nervous because Vern's been involved in it for quite a while, and Vern might make him a little nervous in regards to some of the things that he might be talking about. And also because a number of contractors have worked with homeowners or smaller installations, small commercial installations like banks or fast food restaurants or whatever. And the projects have been put in, and then someone says to them, customers will say to them, why don't you cut those weeds down out there? What are you waiting for? And they say, that's my wildflower planting. So it's got kind of a bad rap, because it doesn't, there's no color in there, and it looks like a bunch of weeds and grasses. Well, grasses are part of the project. So, again, that's why some of them are a little bit nervous. And also, when they bid them out in the bidding process, wildflower seed's expensive. And if someone, oftentimes you're incorporating annual plants in there as well, because as you know, if you're working with perennial plants, you're not going to have a lot the first year or so from perennial plants because they're building their root system that first year or so. And then they're going to maybe start flowering a little bit then the second year. And then by the third year, you'll have something. Well, a lot of people do not want to wait 3 years to get color. And if they don't seed and they use plugs or plants, it's even more expensive. And then the contractor has a hard time finding, in some cases, enough seeds or plugs to put in. And then again, we've had projects where the contractors will generally give you a care sheet or a plan. They'll tell you what you've got, and they'll tell you what you need to do to maintain it. Because if it's not maintained, it could be lost in the first 2 years. And so one contractor went in, and the plants were never. We went into a drought period. I mean, I would say we've been in a drought period for a few weeks here now, after having tons of rain this spring. And so plantings that were put in needed to be watered to move the plugs along, and they weren't. And so many of the plugs have died on site, okay? And so then the contractor says, well, many contractors did not have it written into their contract. And so they were responsible for replanting the site, and they couldn't get plants. So I'm making this sound awful, but it is it is something to be concerned with. I mean, you and like I say, with the labor shortage and the lack of plants, it's been tough, especially last year and this year. So I'm hoping we still get more plantings in, and that more plants are available. But thanks to Vern, who does grow plant material, and thanks to a couple of other folks over here in Mason and Esther, plants and seeds are available, because otherwise they can be pretty hard to get. And again, you don't necessarily want to go and order from a company. I had someone who ordered all the seed from California. I don't know why. They knew somebody out there. There's some great nurseries out in California, but the plants don't tend to like it in Michigan as well. And I don't understand why, but they would rather be in California. I work with the Tree of Life Nursery in California, and on Capistrano, and they are great folks. But I wouldn't buy any seed from them. And I have gotten a couple plants from them, from my friend Mike over there, just to try out here. But again, I don't know, it's pretty tough. They're in a whole different habitat, if you will, okay? Of course, they're worried about water out there, like I was yesterday. I was praying we'd get a little bit this morning, and we did. So we'll take all we can get. But anyway, so there are a lot of different situations. And in the first year, it's critical, if you are, whether it's seeds or plugs or plants, that the weed population be kept down. There's a number of different ways to do that, but it depends on the size of the project too. How large is your property?
You need to unmute, Athena.
So sorry, my property is about half an acre, but it's my front. I have a very large front yard, and I had to remove because the landscaper that I had for a short time last year said they ought to come down and we've got to replant, and she disappeared. So I have one huge sycamore tree that's very shaved and nothing else. Everything's been cleaned out. And my interest in the natives has been mostly to deter ticks, because I got Lyme disease last year, and to also for the beauty and for the ecological balance. But I would like to have a pathway. That's where I would like to have the flowers, just in one pathway, and perhaps incorporated in some of the foundation areas, in the large front area.
And does your front get sun? I mean,
it does get sun. It's more partial. It gets pretty much sun, yeah. But by where the foundation area is, there's going to be less sun than in the very front.
Because one of the issues that comes up a lot of times too is that how much sun does the site have and how much shade does, and there's a lot of great shade natives as well, but they're not as spectacular as the individuals show us the pictures of what they want, and we go, oh, whoa, you have 90% shade, and these pictures are 100% sun plants. So
and the other thing is,
we may have a problem here.
And the other thing is, right now I don't have the trees that are going to create shade. but I do want trees. So that's going to evolve and change with time too. As more shade goes there, some of the things that are viable initially might not be. But that's all got to be thought through, and it's got to.
Yes, yes.
And Vern said that his experience is that a lot of architecture designers just say, okay, they've got their set of plants that they like and they want to use them. And, it's kind of a formula of what works in sun, what doesn't.
Well, see, a lot of them have a set of plants that they like because they know they can get them. and they put them in. But, there's a lot of great trees and shrubs too. The serviceberry or Juneberry, the amelanchier, which is the birds love, is a great native
What did you
plant.
say? What did you call it?
It's amelanchier. It's often referred to as a common name as a Juneberry or a serviceberry. Is a great shrub. And it was nearly impossible for me to find any last year. Now this year I did find some, but again, it just depends on sources and getting them order early in the season and so forth. And I think we're starting to get past this supply chain issue a little bit, but we're dealing with a lot of other issues in the industry right now as well. And I have to, one little scenario I just have to mention too, is that with a lot of homeowners and native landscapes, which also promoted this a little bit more this year, is that a lot of them have a company that they work with that cuts their lawn and fertilizes their lawn and, does a number of these more common things that a lawn care company would do, or even a landscape company would do. And then they got their estimated bill for the year in March, like they normally would. And it was 3 times the amount from last year. In one case, I worked with somebody, it was 4 times the amount because of the cost of fertilizer and the lack of labor. And so they said to me, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to get rid of half of my lawn. And then they said, I'm going to put in wildflowers. And I went, oh boy, here we go. Okay. And I promoted them all my life. So I said, okay, let's see what we can do. And then when I came back with a seed price, they went, oh, okay. But I said, you can start out small and then decide. It's kind of like, I always mentioned it in regards to the quantity to be done, is that someone will say, I want to, last year, everybody, I want a vegetable garden. I gotta have a vegetable garden. We're going back to the Victory Garden days, okay? I want my vegetable garden's gonna be 50 by 100 foot. And I'm gonna put this in and put that in. And I go, whoa, 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 whoa. Have you had a vegetable garden before? No, I had 2 tomato plants. Oh, okay. All right. So they put this huge vegetable garden in, and you know where I'm going with this. Next thing I get a phone call, I got a lot of weeds in here. I got this in here. I don't have time to weed this thing. Will I get any fruit? And then with one person, they had a couple tomato plants that they managed to keep clear, and it was doing well. And then they said, something's eating my tomatoes. I haven't gotten a single tomato out of here. I said, well, we're in a little bit of a drought. The squirrels are a little hungry, and I went out there. It was squirrels. I had squirrels myself biting into tomatoes last year. And then they said, well, what do we do? And I said, well, do you want me to tell you? I said, that can be a big project when you have varmints around too. So, it's easy to chomp off a big project, and then it's hard to, oftentimes hard to keep up with it if someone's going to be, maintaining it themselves. And, I just know of a lot of vegetable gardens that they got some production out of them, but they had a lot of weeds. And then it comes to, they need some water too when we go through a stretch like we've been through in the last few weeks. But there are ways to tackle, this problem. So we can talk a little bit more about it later on. But there's if plants and seeds are available, and Wild Type has some material too that they often have available. But again, a lot of the landscape contractors can get a little bit nervous, and they don't want to take on a project, and they don't want to disappoint you as a client. You know, and oftentimes the client wants a lot of stuff, and then once it's put in, they say, "Oh no, I don't want that much now. I want to go back to this." And even if you look at some of the big projects, and I don't want to mention names, but there are some places that put in a big native planting, you know, and then 2 years later they tore it all up and put in a traditional planting, and then they tore part of the other part up, and you know, so you know, it's a lot of it is perception of what's going to be and what can be, so there's a way to tackle your problem there too. So and get some work done. And it might be a matter of working with a contractor that can install, you know, maybe even part of your project, and then incorporate some other things later on. It doesn't all have to be done at the same time. And it might be a matter of, you know, and again, all of the upfront stuff that needs to be done, you know, soil testing, you know, evaluating the site as to what's there, and then getting a good idea of what you want out of the site, what you want it to look at. Now, you mentioned just a few minutes ago some of the things you'd like to see, the color up there, pathway, etc., up there. And see, a good designer would, you know, be able to pick up on those things and take a look at what you already have, and then begin to incorporate some things into that project.
One of the things. Yeah,
go ahead.
Go on. One of the challenges is he gave me a design, but he said you can put any kind of plants in there. So then I started researching plants because I'm not knowledgeable. And he said, well, you've got to just figure out what you want. And I said, I know the look, and I know I'd like to incorporate native. I just don't know what they are. And he said, well, you've got to define that and then come back to me. And that's where I need help.
Right, know? Right. And see, it sounds to me like maybe he just wasn't comfortable with substituting what maybe were traditional plants that he had put in with natives, and he wasn't sure. And he might also have been concerned a little bit about trying to purchase those plants to put in. And is your site irrigated at all, or is it not? Is it just is it?
Well, I have a sprinkler system in there.
Oh, you do? Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of time of year too. Oftentimes in the spring, we don't worry about that. But you know, when you get into this time of the year, into early fall, we're just worried about keeping everything watered. Not tons of water, but enough to keep it going. And I just received a donation of a number of native dogwoods from someone, and had to get them into a site. And and all I've been worrying about is, okay, it's been dry now for 3 weeks. They're understory plants, they're under trees. So even if we got a 1/10 of an inch a week or so ago, that didn't even reach the ground where those dogwoods were. So I call them up and I say, are you making sure that you're giving them some water, because they're just getting established? And so you always worry about things like that too, the survival and the particular time of the year. But I think that we're getting to the point where finding someone like Vern who can, who knows, what material can be used, but he's not comfortable with the design end of things. So he's like, I thought he had someone he was working with at one time as a designer, but again, I haven't talked to Vern. It's been probably a year and a half or longer. And so getting it on paper and then following through with the various steps afterwards is a process. That's the design process. So yes.
I've worked with Vern. I've worked with Vern, and he has multiple designers. He just doesn't have enough of them.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah.
And that is the problem everywhere. And and I don't know, I'm talking with contractors about projects for next year, and right now it doesn't look any better for next year. Because they have projects booked already through June of next year. And then they've got some big ones after that. So I'm hoping we can explore some possibilities and talk about some other folks too who are involved in the business.
We have about 25 more minutes. We try and keep this to an hour. I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to just, if you've got a question you want to put out there to Robert, please share it. We can just continue this. This is so much information.
Sure.
Really appreciate your time here, knowing how busy you must be right now, Robert. But does anyone else have something burning that they want to put out on the table before we move on? Go ahead, sir.
I have a question in terms of, I'll keep it short, but native plants just got planted yesterday next to the pond that's in my neighborhood. Is the water source, like, can you use pond water to water it if you don't have a hose, or is that not acceptable water to water? Like, is there an issue with pond water for irrigation?
Is this a natural pond that you have, or is it a?
It's kind of like drainage, it's like the neighborhood, the streets, I mean, that's the thing, is the streets the street water goes into it kind of thing.
Okay, so it gets
But I mean,
stormwater
yeah.
going into it. Okay. I see, without knowing the water quality, I always hesitate, especially if I don't know, if the pond's being treated, or are you in a subdivision type of situation, or are you gonna?
Yeah, and the pond is treated. That's my thing. It's like I'm
Oh,
probably not
okay.
good source.
Okay. Yeah, I would want to know the water quality. Are you in
Okay,
a
that's what I thought.
municipality? Are you in a?
It's in Okemos, Cornell
Oh,
Woods.
okay. Okay.
Okay,
Um,
that's what I
Many
figured. Thank you.
ponds are fine to use. Others, it just depends on, if they are being treated, or, there's other things taking place there that might have an effect on the
Okay.
plant material. How many did you put in, plants or plugs, or?
I've worked with Vern, and it took a while, but Vern's designer was able to plant yesterday. And I've
okay.
even gone down there and seen how many they got in, but they planted yesterday, and then she was thrilled that it rained today. So
Yes, I was ecstatic
But
this morning.
ours is a multi-year process, because we're doing certain plants, and then we'll add more. We're trying to put a buffer around the pond.
Okay,
So
so you're doing the
it's gonna be a
meridian
multi-year
buffer.
well, we were working on it. And then, yeah, anyway. So we're just trying to get it built, but it's taken a while with Vern. He's great, but it's just taken a while. So when did I start this, Leroy? What, in 2020, I think? Or before that, I was trying to get it in.
Okay.
So it's taken a while.
So did you worked with Vern through the design process of it?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I
And-
worked with Vern, and then he struggled to find a designer, and then we got a designer, and then that was kind of delayed. So it's just been a multi-year process, and then we ordered the plans, and they were ready, and she put them in yesterday.
Okay.
So.
Now, were the folks that installed the plants from a particular company, or were they with Vern?
It was Vern finding her. She's a horticulturist at MSU.
Oh, okay.
And so it's through Vern. Like
Okay,
the payment
all right,
will go
okay.
Vern.
Okay,
Mhm.
good. All right. Well, I'm glad they got in, but I can
Yeah.
understand why you might be concerned about water.
Yeah.
Because they will need to be kept watered here. And I don't know again, I don't know the terrain and so forth. Do you know what the soil I mean, is it sandy soil? Is it lighter, or is it heavier soil?
I don't know.
Not sure. Okay.
I'm not sure.
All right. Yeah, I would just, if they're plants, I would just keep an eye on them and make sure that, you can get, I don't know who maintains the pond. Do you know?
Me,
You do.
that would be me.
Okay. I
Yeah,
think
I'm the association president.
I just would like to know more about the pond water itself before I would feel comfortable watering. Do you have the ability to get water down there any other way?
There's
I
a
mean,
well, so I'm gonna hopefully just hook up a hose to it, so.
Okay. Yeah, I would be the most comfortable if I could had an idea of what because I'd hate to have you water out of there and then
Yeah, okay,
plants aren't
thank you.
cheap, so I know that might be an issue too. It's like
Thanks.
my neighbor, I live on the Red Cedar River, and my neighbor was pumping water out of the river into his vegetable garden for years. Then he all of a sudden he said, I don't know, it's my system's all clogged up. I said, what are you pumping with? Type of thing. And I said, I don't know, the Red Cedar River doesn't have much water. I said, how's that whole process going? But anyway, but again, that was a 100 by 100 foot vegetable garden that didn't, not much was produced that year either. But I just would like to make sure that you don't damage the plants at all that you've had put in, because you obviously put some time and money into this project. So
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
What I would do is, has Vern been out to your site? I assume he has.
Yeah, he was in the
Okay.
beginning. Mhm.
Okay, if you haven't already, just talk to him about that pond, because he might know more about it than
Mhm.
obviously I do, or you may know. And ask him what his feelings are on using the water on the plant material that was put in. So now, is this
Thank you.
do you know, were these mostly sunny plants that were put
Mhm.
in? Is it a sunny area? Okay,
Mhm.
all right.
Yep.
Great. Who else has questions, including anybody? If I understood you correctly, Bob, kind of start, your general suggestions would be to, think about what you want, but that would also include, how much time do you have, the site conditions, sun, soil, water, that type of thing. And then start simple, keep it simple and small, and sort of build. And obviously what you want also includes how much you're willing to spend.
And I think, starting all those things you just mentioned, Laura, are good ways to start. And then if you should, a designer should be able to answer. I mean, when a project's designed, they would go through that process before as they work through and before they come up with a completed design for you. And then they oftentimes can locate the plant material, because they may be the individual that has also an installation crew that will put it in. Like it sounds like kind of Vern tries to do, but again, he's having trouble finding labor too to do it. So, but they should be able to answer a lot of questions in that process, and you should get some kind of guarantee, obviously, with the job, and a list of the material that was put in and what the care is after the project's installed, because there's always going to be work after the project's installed. The maintenance, what the final maintenance is going to be in order to keep the project looking as good as it does on paper when the design is done. Okay, type of thing. Obviously, getting it off to a good start is critical. Okay, keeping the weeds down and keeping the plants watered. If somebody, let's just say, you know, Sarah, you've just had yours put in. Maybe there's other people that had them put in this spring. And the spring was great because we had plenty of water. But again, watch it the rest of the year. Hopefully when we get to October, we get our regular fall rains. Things will be good. Carry it into the next year. And again, the next few months, just keeping competition down. You don't want the plugs, plants, or seeds to have too much competition from weeds, and keeping the invasives or weedy plants out and down is probably the top priority, just to get them to fall when we get adequate moisture and carry them through the winter. And then you can start all over again in the spring. If I'm always happy to talk with someone about their site. Again, my schedule is out a ways as well. The time of year is always a factor as well, too. So, if anybody has any questions or anything, you feel free to send me an email, and I'd be happy to answer them. And if I can help in any way, I'll respond to you and let you know. It's not a reason not to head for native plants and keep planting them. It's just discouraging when it's tough to find material and also labor to get a project done. So Athena, I understand your frustration probably by now for a number of different reasons to get something done.
Bob, xeriscaping is something that has some appeal too.
Sure.
Are there native plants that would be accommodated under those kinds of conditions, drier conditions? Many
natives will take great, a lot of very dry conditions. I'm thinking right now I have a massive patch of Monarda or bee balm, and that takes it extremely dry. Coneflowers take it extremely dry. There are many that will take it very, very dry. They'll need, they have to build up, they have to get some size, and then they will require some water. Where in a lot of xeriscape situations, you have dry conditions for long periods of time. And that's a little bit more of a concern with Michigan natives. But generally, like I say, in the fall time of the year, they get adequate moisture to carry them through. And then, we started off this year great. I was hoping it wasn't going to be like the last couple of years where we get a month or 2 or 3 of drought and then we get water.
If you were going to mention a successful small project in the area or in the mid-Michigan, are there some that come immediately to mind? And what were some of the secrets of success?
There are a few. They generally don't let me mention where they're at because they don't want to have a lot of people come out to them, but there are some. And that's something maybe we can talk, about getting some on a tour of sites too, with the township, as we have been talking about in the past here. But there are some projects, and I would say they weren't extremely large. They were on the small side. They used plugs, small plants. They adequately watered them through the first, 3-4 weeks that they were in. That particular year that a couple of them were put in where they were okay with the natural rain. I think they only had to be watered once or twice. They did very well. I think two of 4 or 5. I haven't seen them in recent years, but it was a good mix. You need a good mix of native flowering plants, but you need grasses as well. So little blue stem, big blue stem, prairie drop seed, those, because if you're doing these were kind of small prairie plantings, but grasses and wildflowers are they're a combo. That's the habitat. And they help keep down the weeds as well. So if you have an adequate number of them, they do a great job. I would say that was a success with these plantings, is that they got established well, and the particular selection of varieties grew well together, choked out a lot of weeds, they were burned the 3rd year, which is normally part of the process if you have a prairie planting. And then one was a wildflower, was a wooded planting, and it did very well. And again, just making sure that it had, there were small trees like dogwoods, serviceberry, so forth, that were put in. And then there were, ground cover type of natives, trilliums, on down the line. Again, they were kept watered well that first year, and then they came through next couple of years. They were fantastic. So I know there was another planting that was like that was in a large backyard, about 1.5 acre area. That didn't do as well, but then the house was sold and somebody else took over, and one of those type of situations. So, but the planting itself came through very well through 2 years at least, and then there was some storm damage that occurred too. So, but there are some plantings in the area here, kind of secluded. They're not something that you can really see, but if you work with like a couple of the organizations that are in this local area here and get in on a couple of their tours, you can see some of the sites that have been done that are very successful. And I don't know if you've done that or not, but there's, I don't know exactly. I know Meridian Township has some stuff up online for some other plantings here, and we're working on, or hopefully working on, some of these buffer plantings along the wetland areas. So, but it's a big factor, which I tell the contractors, is patience. It does take some patience, because it does take the perennial plants a little while to get established, to get going and get established, to the point where you've got a show of flowers and grasses and so forth. And again, if it's done by seed, you're going to wait a while. If it's done by plugs, you're still going to wait a little while. And if it's done by larger plant material, obviously it moves along a little bit faster. But just depending again on the soil as well, and in selecting the right plants for the right soil conditions. And again, we're not talking about a lot of exotic type of plant material. Many of the plants are pretty common perennial plants that are put in. And if you use annuals, there's usually just a couple different kinds that are used, because they, again, will give some quick color the first year. And then you don't expect them to last, because annuals don't last. And in many projects, they're just being used as a temporary filler to provide some color, knock down some weeds, and allow the perennials to grow and develop.
What about mulch? I know the weeds are a big thing this contractor mentioned, and he doesn't like to plant closely. But with natives, I thought by planting closely, you help prevent weeds from developing. And would you use mulch with natives in a pathway, for example?
Yeah, in a pathway, yeah, that would be a different situation. In general, you don't usually do much mulching unless you're doing like what Sarah did. There are some larger plants are put in. And then oftentimes they will put some type of mulching material around them to hold the water there for a larger plant for a while. But usually on a project of any size, it's just not cost effective to use the mulch material. And therefore there's not much that's used. Now, again, that would be in an open sunny area. In a wooded type of area, they're using often time. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, I was using leaf mold mulch in a planting like that, and it was beautiful stuff. I don't know where this person got this mulch from, but it was fantastic. It also looked good with the plantings when they were done, especially in a walk area, or an area off a deck, an area off a highly visual site versus the planting that's done off in the distance. But in general, mulch probably is not used unless it's a particular type of planting, like a woodland planting, where it's part of the process there.
Would you say there are some mulches that would be better, like would cedar be better, or hardwood or softwood?
I think if you used a shredded mulch, I like shredded red pine mulch to use in some situations. There are some other mulches that are available, but I think a natural mulch is, I'm not a fan of the colored mulches. Some people are, and I don't know. It's I would go with a good shredded mulch, and some of the pines, and also the leaf litter mulches that were used were oak, and they were it was beautiful stuff. So there are some available. Last year, a lot of people couldn't get mulch because the companies didn't have the labor to bag the mulch. And therefore, if they were buying it by the yard, you could get it, but you couldn't get it otherwise. So, but that's improved. So there is hope on the horizon here, folks, okay? Somewhere along the line. I did talk to someone a week or two ago who also was able to get some plants, native trees that they couldn't get before. So it's improving slowly but surely. So Athena, you will get your planting in. Here, hang in there.
Well, I will probably enlist a little bit of your help. Maybe some evening, if you wanted to drop by, we can maybe arrange that. I don't know.
We can see time-wise how it'll work out. So shoot me an email. Just shoot me an email is fine. I'm just at welchrob@comcast.net.
Thanks. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Rob. This has been a really informative talk. Really appreciate you carving some time out. And we probably have time for one more quick question or comment if someone has one.
Sarah, good luck with your planting, Sarah.
Thank you. I'm excited.
I would say check with, give Vern a call. Although I know Vern's very difficult. Do you have trouble getting hold of Vern by phone?
No, he and my son have karate together, so I can talk with him.
Oh, okay. So you have an inroad there. So I should be calling you when I want to get a hold of Vern. No. Call your son. Yeah, I tried in the spring and I know he was swamped, but yeah, I had a hard time reaching him during that period of time. But yeah, good luck with your planting. And like I say, just
Yeah, have you thought about karate lessons, Rob? Bruce, do you have any comments or questions? We're good. Nice background there. You get the award for the best Zoom background today. Thank you so much.
Hey, Bruce, is that native grass back there?
I'd like to think so.
Good.
All right. Well,
Thanks,
everyone
guys.
have a great week, and I'm sure the conversation will continue. Thanks for offering your email, Rob. And
Yes, shoot me questions. I'm not the fastest responder, but I will respond. My
Okay.
goal
Thank
is to get back to you in at least 2 days, so.
good luck, Athena and Sarah, and we'll see you all next week, hopefully.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
All right.